Some people like to think the deep web is a joke. It's not. In no way is it a place for some half-hearted show-off to stumble into. In fact, I'd advise even the most seasoned hackers with any shred of a moral compass to stay far away from that place. It's a place that will scar you and leave you terrified to follow the cyber footprints left by someone else's shadow ever again. I know this because I'm a hacker, or at least I used to be one. I had been using computers since I was 12 years old. I was always fascinated with the idea of being a cyber crusader, determined to explore the uncharted territories of the internet. I got pretty good at utilizing bits of software here and there, and it even reached the point where the slow crawl of dial-up internet didn't affect me anymore. After all, when you know which processes to keep running and which ones to kill to increase your PC's crawl rate, the internet speed didn't matter as much. By the time I was 20, I could confidently call myself an ace at hacking. I kept up with the best and had made a name for myself among the other hackers on the web. In fact, I was one of the few thousand who had managed to figure out how to hack the Google search bar to dig deeper into directories and get what we wanted. Call it our personal attack for the rights Google bought for YouTube, slapping content creators with copyright infringements left and right. Those early years of YouTube weren't pretty. I had my channel taken down several times because of Google's purchase, but that's beside the point. This has no bearing on the story. I'm simply offering a little history lesson, especially for the younger netizens out there. Anyone who was a hacker knew about the deep web. It had the same reputation back then as it does now. Drugs, guns, illegal imports, you name it. The deep web was, and still is, the gateway to the global black market. I had purchased a few imported goods and had a decent amount of drugs during that time. Sophomore year of college was when I was stoned almost constantly, so I was a regular on the digital black market. Most of my friends came to me for the hookup, and I could always cut them a good deal because of my frequent interactions with sellers on the net. Back then, you didn't have things like Tor browsers to access the deep web. You had to know what you were doing: ghost hacking, proxies, parent directories, backdoors, scramblers, dump sites. These were all techniques hackers used in the days when Java wasn't as prevalent in browsers. It was often referred to as the dark net. I'm not sure when it transitioned into the deep web, and frankly, I don't care. I'm never going back. One day, my CRT monitor finally died, and after ordering a new monitor and RAM, I was set to go. My plan was to try to barter for a better sound card when I could afford it, with a vendor I frequented on the dark net. While I was setting up to do a bit of gaming, I got an alert from one of my net friends. He had stumbled across something interesting, a series of black boxes that, when opened, seemed to lead you down another web directory. It was like tunneling, but more vast. Knowing my curiosity, he passed the information along to me, knowing I would want to follow up. I was one of the few vagrant hackers in my circle, always exploring mindlessly, taking one path, then another, opening doors to see where they led. Most of the time, you'd either come across a treasure trove of information or a dead end. He hadn't cut any corners when breaking everything down for me. His start point, the pathways he'd taken, how often he reset his IP address, what protocols he used, the encryption he encountered with each box, and how long it took to reach the next one. 7 boxes in total, and upon reaching the 7th, he'd gotten stuck. Challenge accepted. I quickly glanced over the data, booting up the ghost hacks and IP scramblers to keep my movements hidden. With the new encryption I had, I could latch onto an existing IP address for 30 seconds before bouncing to another one, making it appear as though I'd disappeared. It was great in theory, but it forced me to move slowly on my sad little Inspiron. In 10 minutes, I was ready. Following my friend's paths, I activated the encryptions to keep myself safe. It didn't take long for me to run into the first black box, a basic encryption that was easy to crack. Inside was a directory with 4 subdirectories. I knew my friend went down the second link, but curiosity led me to pick the first one. Within 3 minutes, I realized it was a dead end, so I quickly backtracked and stuck to his original path. In about half an hour, I had gone through 6 black boxes and reached the 7th. The encryption on this one was different. Every hacker, no matter how good, leaves a sliver of information behind. You just have to know what to look for. I knew this was where my friend had gotten stuck. This lock was unique, and I knew it would take time to break. It was a Thursday night, and I had finished up my work early for once. I wasn't called into work, so I had time to kill. The encryption was annoying, more tedious than challenging. It took 45 minutes, but I finally broke through. I felt like I was on top of the world, but the only thing in the new directory was a redirect hyperlink labeled WTTMH. I didn't stop to wonder what those letters meant. Like a fool, I clicked the link and let it redirect me. My ghost was active, so I wasn't worried about being traced. The website loaded slowly, likely because my ghost was filtering and tunneling to avoid detection. It was clear I'd entered through a back door, which hackers like me only use when we think we're invincible or if we are the site manager. 5 minutes later, the page loaded. Soft, creepy carnival music played faintly in the background. Across the screen in bold letters it read, "Welcome to the Monkey House." I was intrigued. As a huge Kurt Vonnegut fan, I recognized the title. For those who haven't read the short story collection, I assumed I was about to enter a place full of rebels, preaching like they were in Harrison Bergeron. I wish I had been right. I really do. A chat window popped up on the bottom right, greeting me with a message I'll never forget. "Welcome to the Monkey House, home of all the chills and thrills you can imagine, and some even beyond your wildest dreams. Would you like a guided tour?" I didn't want to linger, but something in me was drawn to it. The host was likely watching the site traffic, so I wrote, "No, thank you." The reply was quick. "Do you already know your way around?" "I don't think I've seen you here before." "No. I was referred by a friend," I typed. I couldn't believe I lied, but panic set in. I knew this wasn't a bot. I was talking to a real person. I was far deeper into the dark net than I usually ventured. They could eat me alive if I gave them a reason to be suspicious. "Oh, you mean for the event this evening? We gave guest vouchers to our VIP members, so they could invite friends. Your voucher must be a part of that." Event? I hadn't heard about any event. "Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I don't know my way around and I don't see any guide links." "Well, you wouldn't be able to see those with a guest voucher anyway. The Monkey House is membership only. The only way in is through a voucher or an actual invitation. That's why I didn't recognize your IP address." My heart dropped. They could see my IP, which meant they could track me if I wasn't careful. Panicking, I stopped the ghost from scrambling my IP and checked the now static address, which showed I was from Turkey. "Well, the event will begin soon. Just follow the link when you're ready." The message ended with a cheery, "Thank you for coming and enjoy the show." The chat window disappeared, and I was left with only the dark carnival music and a ticker across the top of the screen announcing the event's start. Another window popped up, a group chat room full of usernames. Everyone was counting down the seconds. The event was about to start. It wasn't long before a masked person appeared on the screen. He wore a stark white porcelain mask with blue eyes and a twisted black smile. He introduced himself as Hans Twilight, the ringleader of this humble little carnival. What followed was a nightmare. A man, strapped to a table wearing an elephant mask, fought against his restraints as a buzzing saw roared to life. The audience in the video cheered as the man was slowly inched toward the blade. I felt my stomach drop as I realized what was happening. This wasn't a sideshow. This was real. The chat room lit up with excitement. One member, Trixie Mere 571, was chosen as the executioner. I could hardly believe what I was seeing as she typed her decision. Death by table saw. I couldn't watch any longer, but the sound of the saw cutting through flesh and bone will forever be burned into my mind. I wanted to leave. I tried to exit the browser, but I couldn't. My mouse wouldn't work, the keyboard froze, and the window wouldn't close. The horror continued. I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. Eventually, the window closed, but it didn't end there. I felt a cold chill crawl up my spine. They knew me now. They knew where I'd been. And somewhere, in the darkest corner of that site, they were watching me. The sound of the carnival music still echoed in my ears despite the window closing. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keyboard, trying to force a shutdown. But something was wrong. The screen flickered, and the mouse cursor jumped across the screen as though someone, or something else, was controlling it. I tried moving the mouse, but it slid back into the same spot, locking on the same tab. Then came the message. It was a simple pop-up. You've watched. Now you must join us. I froze. My blood ran cold. I didn't know what to do. There was no way I was going back into that room. No way. But the more I tried to close the tab, the more stubbornly it reappeared. It was like the site had embedded itself into my system. I powered down my laptop, but the moment I closed it, the screen flickered again. This time, the words were different. You can't hide from us, my real name. We know where you are, and we're already waiting. My heart pounded in my chest. My mouth went dry. How did they know my real name? I hadn't typed it anywhere on the site. Hell, I hadn't even used a real email when registering. I immediately unplugged the laptop, pulled the battery, and shoved it into my drawer. But that didn't make the fear go away. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house, every rustle in the dark, felt like someone was watching. I locked all the doors, turned off my phone, and stayed awake the whole night, certain I was being followed. The next day I wiped my laptop, deleted everything, reinstalled the OS, changed every password I could think of. But something strange happened when I tried to access my email. An encrypted message appeared in my inbox with no subject line, just a single word: soon. I opened the email despite my better judgment. The text was garbled, full of random characters, but there was one clear part buried at the bottom of the message. It was a timestamp, exactly 48 hours from when I opened the email. And that's when I knew. It wasn't over. I felt a sickening realization crawl over me. I was being hunted. The next few days passed in a fog. I couldn't focus. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched. I went through my usual routine, waking up, going to class, and pretending to be normal. But every time I checked the clock, the countdown was ticking closer. 2 days later, just as the time stamped in the email approached, I started receiving strange messages on my phone. At first, it was a single text. Are you ready? I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was a joke. I didn't know. But it was the next text that made my blood run cold. The game begins now. I immediately checked my surroundings. My phone was still connected to the Wi-Fi, but there was something odd. The IP address had changed, and it was no longer registered to my home city. It was something I didn't recognize, a location I couldn't trace. Panic surged through me. I ran to my laptop. Desperately, I tried to disconnect from the internet, but it was too late. The screen flickered again, showing that damn mask, the one with the twisted grin. You've watched the show. Now it's your turn. The monkey house will always find you. Always. I screamed in frustration, slamming my fist into the keyboard. But the screen didn't go black. Instead, it showed a live feed. My own room. I froze. Someone had a camera in my apartment. My eyes darted around the room, scanning for any possible place they could have planted a device. I checked every corner, behind my shelves, under the desk, but found nothing. The screen flickered again, and my face was now on it, distorted by the mask. Then came the sound, an eerie laughter, faint but growing louder, as if it was coming closer. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't want to answer. I was too afraid of what was on the other end. The message from the phone screen read, "You've been marked." The game's final phase begins now. A sudden knock at my door sent my heart into overdrive. I ignored it, but then it came again. Louder this time, persistent, demanding. Whoever it was, they knew where I lived. I felt trapped. My breath was coming in shallow gasps. I couldn't think clearly. I ran to the window, hoping to see someone in the distance, but the street was empty. The knock came again. I checked the peephole. Nothing, but I could feel something, a presence, like someone was standing just outside, waiting. The knocking persisted, but now it wasn't just on the door. It was on the walls, the floor, everywhere. I couldn't escape. Every corner of my apartment was vibrating, as though someone was trying to force their way in. And with each knock, the carnival music returned, faint at first, then louder, closer. Then my phone rang. I answered it, trembling. There was only silence on the other end. Finally, a voice broke through the static. It was distorted, unrecognizable. "Time's up." The call ended abruptly. At that moment, the door burst open, but no one was there. All that remained was a small black box placed on the floor. I knew what it was. The 8th box. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to know what was inside. But the clock was ticking, and deep down, I understood. If I didn't open it, they would find me. I reached for the box, my hands shaking. As I lifted the lid, the screen on my laptop flickered one last time. In the reflection of my screen, I saw them, standing behind me, waiting. And that was the moment I realized the game was never really over. That was the last time I ever saw my apartment. I opened the box. Inside, there was nothing but a single cracked mirror. The glass shimmered for a moment, then became clouded, as though it was trying to reflect something that didn't belong in this world. I reached out to touch it, and the moment my fingers brushed against the surface, everything went still. The noise, the pounding, the unsettling carnival music, all of it stopped. I wasn't sure what I expected, but the feeling of cold dread that flooded my chest was undeniable. There was a whisper, a low hum, that seemed to echo from the very walls themselves. Then, in the reflection of the cracked mirror, I saw a shadow. Not mine. It was tall, elongated, wearing a grin far too wide to be human. The smile stretched unnaturally, creeping up its face like something grotesque, something that didn't belong in this world. I jerked my hand back, heart racing, but the mirror didn't stop reflecting what wasn't there. The shadow in the glass was moving. It was coming for me. I tried to close my eyes, to look away, but the mirror's pull was stronger than any fear I had ever known. I felt my breath quicken as the shadow inched closer, its grin widening with each passing second, as if it were savoring my panic. It reached out to the mirror, and I could almost feel its icy fingers brush against my cheek. I had to escape. But no matter where I ran, no matter how fast I tried to move, the shadow was always behind me. My heart pounded in my chest. My legs felt heavy. Every step I took seemed like it only drew me closer to that reflection, to that thing, whatever it was. It was like the world around me was folding, trapping me in the reflection's endless nightmare. The laughter came again, soft at first, like a whisper at the back of my mind, then louder, more insistent. It was the same twisted carnival music, only now it was distorted, like it was warping reality itself. I tried to break the mirror, smashing my fists against it, but it didn't shatter. It only cracked more, the fractures spreading, and in each of them I saw the shadow grow more powerful, more alive. My phone buzzed again, its screen glowing in the darkness, but I didn't need to check. I knew what it would say. "You can't outrun us. You're ours now." The room began to shift. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as though they were alive. I could hear the carnival sounds becoming deafening, the squeals of joy and terror mixing into an endless chorus. I could feel something closing in on me, pressing in from all sides. I slammed my fist against the wall, my vision blurred with panic. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But then I heard it. A voice, low and guttural, coming from behind me. "You should have never watched." I spun around, only to see the reflection of myself. No, not me. The figure in the mirror now stood directly in front of me, its grin stretching impossibly wide, its eyes black pits of nothingness. Its breath was foul, like rotting meat, and it spoke again. "You're just like the rest." A part of the game. The shadow's form reached out, its fingers brushing my skin like ice. It felt wrong, not just cold, but unnatural. It didn't belong in the world of the living. It was a thing that had never been meant to exist. And then it spoke one last time. "You will join us." I felt its grip tighten around my throat, and I couldn't breathe. I tried to scream, to fight, but my vision began to blur, my limbs growing weak. I was slipping. I was fading. But before everything went dark, I saw the reflection of the mask. That familiar, twisted smile staring back at me from the mirror. And that was when I realized I was already one of them. It's been days now, and everything is different. I can still hear the carnival music faintly, like it's always playing just beyond my awareness. Sometimes I see the reflections of people who shouldn't be there, masks, distorted faces grinning back at me in mirrors. And when I look closely, I see their eyes flicker. They've been watching me all along, and now I'm a part of the game. The monkey house has found me, and I am one of them.